What's up, you all? James Sweezy's on his way here, and we're gonna do an interview, but I got a surprise for him. He told me the story in Utah when we flew out there for a retreat, and it was I called it the Iboga Experiment. And I've only heard him share it one time, so I'm gonna surprise him and see if he'll make a video on his trip to Costa Rica to try this right before the very end of his run. So let's see let's get him. What's up? Hey, I got an idea for the interview today.
What's up?
Will you tell us about the Iboga Experiment?
God.
So, I heard you tell the story in Utah when we went to speak at a retreat out there, Valley Camp. It really caught my attention. It really inspired me because of this sort of reservation that we, even years sober, seem to have at different points in our life. So, what led you to the Iboga experience?
It was a very dark time in my life, and I was hooked on Suboxone at the time. And I went through this process where I tried to taper myself off several times. So I talked to a friend of mine that's from here in Louisville, Kentucky, and he said, "Hey man, they found the cure for addiction." And you know me, I'm like, awesome, I'll take two, right? He said, "You gotta get a passport, go out of the country and take this." I said, "What is it?" He says, "Iboga." He said he went down and took it. The withdrawal symptoms went away after a couple of days, and he was fine. I made a decision that the normal routes wouldn't work. I had tried to detox off of Suboxone, and it didn't work. I laid in bed for 14 days one time. I laid in bed for 45 days another time. And I had convinced myself there's something different with me that nobody knows about, and this is my only other alternative. It's the only other thing I can do. So talked to my mom about it, talked to my dad about it. Of course, everybody told me I was crazy. They're like, I remember my dad saying, "What if you go down there and these people don't know what they're doing and you end up a vegetable or something?" To give you an idea where my mind state was, I said, "Well, pull the plug." I mean, I was that far done. It sounded like an option. So I booked a flight against the will of my parents. I said, "I'm going." And crazy thing leading up to it, right? I know that I'm gonna go down there, and I'm sort of trying to prepare myself. So I was on Suboxone at the time, but I would use anything. I'm a polysubstance abuser. I grabbed one last Oxy 80, and at the time I couldn't afford the trip all the way to San Jose, Costa Rica. I had to find a deal. And I found an airline flying out of Chicago that had a really cheap ticket. It was like $300. So I came up with a master plan. I'll take a Greyhound from Louisville, Kentucky up to Chicago, go to the airport, fly from there, take the ride up there, and I'm hiding in my seat, grinding off little bits of that Oxy 80. Get to Chicago, and mind you, I'm not from a big city. I get out, start walking down the street looking for the blue train to get to Chicago O'Hare Airport. And I walked up and down the street, 2 o'clock in the morning, and there's nobody out there to ask. I couldn't find the train station. Eventually one guy comes walking along, and I said, "Hey man, I gotta find the train, the subway. I gotta get to the airport." He said, "Oh, it's right there. There's these black rails underneath a bridge." And I didn't notice there was a staircase in the middle of it. It was right there the whole time. So I walked down the stairs, and it was like a whole city underground. You know, it was police and police dogs. And I go down, I get on the train, and I'm grinding a little bit of that Oxy on the train, get out to the O'Hare Airport. I had a few hours to spend in that airport. So as they're about to call our flights, I go in the bathroom and I just smashed the rest of it into one big line, you know. I snorted it. I figured that's what I got. And I had a long trip. So we flew from Chicago to Fort Lauderdale, switched planes there and got on a plane and flew down to San Jose, Costa Rica in Central America. I got off the plane there, went through customs, got my passport stamped, then walk outside, and this lady, she met me at the airport. They wouldn't let you leave the airport on your own, an American. That they stop you, the police, and mind you, it's not regular police. They wear full military garb. They stop you and say, "Whoa, where are you going? Who are you riding with?" They don't want you to get kidnapped or whatever. And then this lady had a picture of me, and I said, I'm with her. She was holding up a picture of me. And I waved at her, and she come over and just told the cop, said he's with me. So I get in the car with her, and she says, are you sick? And I was like, yeah, I'm getting there. She reached into her purse and pulled out 2 chewable morphines and handed them to me. I chewed those up, rode on out to a place called Mercedes, Costa Rica. Went inside the house, met the people that I was there to meet, and they made me wait 24 hours. You're not allowed to eat for 24 hours. You have to clean your system out. The next morning, I took my first dose of Iboga.
Did it work?
So, no, I'm not. Did it work for symptom removal? Yeah, it removed the symptoms. There's other stuff here. You can go to a medical detox in the United States and have the symptoms removed. There's other things you can do other than going, to another country. Now, mind you, this wasn't a treatment center or a hospital. The guy was wearing scrubs, I'll give him that, and they called him the doctor. But this was just in a house. I took it, and then after 24 hours of being on Iboga, which is a hallucinogen, I stood up and I said, man, I feel okay. And I remember they said, do you feel normal? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know what normal feels like. I've been high for so long. I don't know what normal feels like. He said, let me ask you this. Are you withdrawing right now? No, not really. And I was skeptical, right? And the withdrawals never came, but severe fatigue set in. I'm restless, irritable, and discontented by nature. I'm sitting there in this house. They had a swimming pool. They had a masseuse. They had a hot tub. They prepare your meals and bring them to you. It was $5,000 just to them. Not to mention the plane tickets, the passport, and all the other stuff you have to go through. But they prepare everything for you. It's a nice place. It's in the mountains of Costa Rica. You know what I mean? Best coffee I've ever had in my life. But it wasn't enough for me. You see, I speak Spanish well enough to get around. I went outside. I escaped, actually. I grabbed my bag and I ran from them. I didn't have to, but I did. It was open. But I went outside, I grabbed a cab, and I said, take me in town. And we went into the city of San Jose, which they told me not to do. They said, don't go in there. But I went in anyway. And in my mind, I was going to get a chicken fajita. I bet they have the best chicken fajitas in the world here. This is where they invented them. So I get in this cab, I ride in. You know that thing we talk about, it says there's a certain sense of security in the familiar, right? I didn't go to a grocery store or a street vendor or a family restaurant, which they have. I was attracted to the place that had the neon signs in the windows and the pool tables right up front. It smelled like stale beer. Walked straight in. I was believing the lie in my head that I was just bored and I'm going out to get something to eat right now. No biggie, right? Sat down at the bar in there, and the first thing I ordered was a shot of Patron. Patron was $1 a shot there. So I was like, this is great. $1 US for a shot. So I started drinking. I remember ordering shots of Patron for everybody that was in the building at some point. I was like, give everybody one. This is great, So I blacked out. I have vague memories. I don't have any memory of leaving that restaurant or going out and getting into any type of cab or vehicle or anything. I do have vague memories of passing through where I got my passport stamped the second time. But I don't have any memories of leaving that restaurant, getting into a car with anyone or anything specific. I went out drinking and I came to, I was laying on a dirt floor inside of a shed or a barn of some sort. I stood up, and those 3-day thumper headaches you're about to have where you drank too much. I stood up off this dirty floor in this shed and kind of looked around. I walked outside. There was a big field there with one house and this canopy above me. The trees were much taller with this canopy above me. I didn't realize at the time that I was in the rainforest. So I started yelling in Spanish for someone to come outside. This guy walks out with a jug of water. He starts walking over to me, bringing it to me. And I asked him, I was like, how did I get here? And he said, well, you were passed out at our friend's bar up the street. In Central America, people put neon lights outside their house, and they put an umbrella out there, and they have a cooler with beer in it and things like that. That's a bar. And I had rolled up on one of those and started drinking, and I vaguely remember being at that place, but I don't remember how I got from there to in that barn. I told the guy, I said, I had that 3-day thumper, I'm sweating it out, I feel sick. And I told the guy, I was like, look, I just want to go back to San Jose. I need to go home. And he said, no, Managua is right up the road. I didn't know what he was saying at the time. I said, Managua, I don't even know what that means. And I said, I just want to go to San Jose so I can go home. And he said, no, you have to go to Managua first. And I was like, dude, I'm not going to Managua. He's like, no, you're not listening to me. You're not in Costa Rica. This is Nicaragua. And the capital city, Managua, is about 2 hours from here. And it took a minute to sink in. I crossed a border in Central America, blacked out, and rolled upon a bar and blacked out in that bar. And these people, they saved me. You don't want to go to jail in Central America, particularly in Nicaragua. Okay, the police are not, they're not like our cops where they have a marked cop car. It's the stuff you see on TV where there's a pickup truck full of guys dressed in army fatigues in the back holding AKs. That's what the police look like there. And they knew that I was going to be in some serious trouble and probably not get out of that jail, be held for ransom, where they make you call your family and say, tell your family to send 10 grand or we're not letting you out of here, that type of thing. And he hid me in his barn. I had to go back to the capital city of Managua, and I called my grandmother and said, hey, I'm stuck in Central America. I don't know how I'm gonna get home. She booked me a flight from Managua, Nicaragua, back to Louisville, Kentucky. And I came back here.
So what is Ibogaine or Iboga?
It's a mild hallucinogen that people are billing as the cure for addiction. You and I both know that's not true. I guess it works for symptom removal. If you're dope sick, having withdrawal symptoms or whatever, there's lots of things that, good and bad, that take away withdrawal symptoms, that help with withdrawal symptoms. So Ibogaine comes from the Iboga bush, right? And I described this to you earlier because a lot of people talk about ayahuasca, right? Mm-hmm. They say that Ibogaine is a motorcycle, ayahuasca is a rocket ship, right? And don't get it wrong. These are like narcotics, powerful hallucinogens, right? But Ibogaine is the more mild of the two. It comes from a bush in Africa called the Iboga bush. And there's two forms of it. One is they peel the bark off the outside of the tree, and that's called total alkaloid. You can just chew that and you'll get some effect out of it. The other is Ibogaine HCl, where they extract it from there into a white powder, and it's a more concentrated form. At the time, not 8 years ago, something like that, they're billing it as the cure. This is the answer to your problems. Well, you gotta think, man. We've both been dope sick. When you're sweating it out and you don't know where you're gonna get your next fixed and you don't have any money, anything that'll make you feel better sounds like a solution. So that's why they can bill it as a fix, a solution. This is the answer to your problem to make that withdrawal sickness and all that go away. But the truth of the matter is, it's just symptom removal. It's just gonna stop the sickness temporarily, like a Suboxone, like a methadone, something like that. And I got back on a plane and went back home with no follow-up, with no kind of program. I wasn't interested in any type of fellowship meetings or anything. I had found the cure. But if I found the cure, why did I go to that bar and get blackout drunk?
You mentioned that it addressed symptoms. Do you wholeheartedly believe that it addressed any trauma that you put yourself through in the past?
No, it didn't address any trauma. It didn't address anything except symptom removal, right? It didn't heal me. It didn't cause me to think differently, right? Like, in the program we work now, we teach ourselves over a period of time how to start your day, live your day, end your day, manage resentments, clean up the messes that you make during the day, arguing with your girl, being mean to your kids, whatever it is, or mean to your parents. And then we inventory that at night and look at it and say, I shouldn't have done that today. It says continue to watch for jealousy, dishonesty, resentment, fear. We watch for those things and inventory them at night. And then we go through a process where we don't want to repeat that behavior the next day. There's no chemical that can give you that. Okay, so in the weeks after, I was still completely delusional. The symptoms had been removed, but my thinking had not changed. I didn't have a new design for living, a new way to go through my day, a new way to deal with anger and fear. So I come back to Louisville, Kentucky, and my mother helped me rent a room in a house in East Louisville over here. The plan was that I was telling everybody was I went and did that. I'm off now and I'm gonna go get a job and carry on with my life. And restless, irritable discontent sinks in. Boredom, anxiety, fear of self-reliance. I'm not gonna get up in the morning and go to these places and walk in and ask them for a job that pays $20 or $25 an hour. I have no skill set. Nobody's gonna hire me anyway. All that stuff sinks in, right? And so I would convince my mother or my grandmother, like, send me $300 and I'll go buy some new clothes with it. I'll go get a shirt and tie and I'll be out tomorrow morning back on the grind, and I'm gonna go get a job and I'll make things better. They would send me the $300, and the first thing I would do is drive to the liquor store and get me a little bottle of Patron, a pack of Bud Ice or whatever. I would go back, sit around the apartment, I would start drinking. The phenomenon of craving would kick in. I would get a buzz, and it was never enough for me. Black out, and I'd head straight out the door and look for the next best fix I could find. Cocaine, crack, heroin, some painkillers, whatever it was. Some days that $300 only lasted one day. Sometimes it lasted a couple days, and I would call my mother or my grandmother again and give them some story about, well, I paid rent, I bought groceries, I did all the stuff I told you I was gonna do, but nobody's called me back yet. And rent's gonna be due again next week, and I need food. Can you send me another 300? I kept that pattern rolling right there to the tune of about $20,000 that my grandmother and my mother had sent me. Just in the period of time that I came back, in the few months after coming back from taking Iboga. And eventually they tapped out. I was running around the project, or the hood down there, all these trap houses, hanging out with all these drug addicts. And my big plan was, don't worry, we're all gonna get together and go to Costa Rica and take Iboga, and we're all gonna get better together. It's like, okay, I can do coke and drink alcohol, and yeah, I'll take some of your heroin, whatever. I'll do all that right now, but the big plan is we're all gonna get together and go to Costa Rica together and get better as a group and tell the whole world about how awesome it was.
Would you recommend it to anyone?
No, I can't, no. I'm a little resilient to talking about it. I don't wanna make it sound like this is a good idea to anyone. If you can afford to go do this, you can afford to go to a real place with real medical professionals. You don't have to get sick. This was a lack of knowledge, a lack of understanding how this stuff works. I couldn't understand why the doctors would tell me, oh, it only takes 3 to 5 days to detox off of the Suboxone. Well, I made it 14 days and I was still dope sick. I made it 45 days and I was still dope sick. So after that happened, all bets were off. I'm not listening to any of you all anymore. I'm gonna go find another way. If one good thing came out of all of that, I learned that it was all BS. What they were telling me at that clinic, what they were telling me about Iboga, and that there's only one other solution for me. That's 100% abstinence.
What's the alternative for people considering Iboga, kratom, or say ayahuasca?
I love that you bring up kratom. That's another one. I get messages all the time on my page. I get messages from Indonesia that show me warehouses full of that stuff and tell me they can give me a great discount price on it so I can sell it to my following or whatever, and show me all this money I can make. I get it all the time. I block them instantly. Same with the Iboga, the ayahuasca, right? There's normal people that go out here in the world that want like a spiritual high, or they want to try something, and they fly to other countries and they try ayahuasca and they try Iboga, and they come back and tell you what a spiritual experience they had. They can also drink like 2 beers and go home and go to bed, right? They don't slam 12 packs and then start asking you where an 8-ball's at. We're talking about 2 different classes of people here. When it comes to a drug addict or an alcoholic like myself that likes to use chemicals and other substances to change the way I feel, no, I don't recommend none of this. I recommend you go to a real detox and hang around real people in recovery and real people that know what they're doing, and embed yourself into that community. This thing where you don't want to embed yourself into a recovery community and go to events with sober people, go out to eat with sober people, it's pointless. It comes back to using a substance to change the way you feel. There's a real solution out here. There's real ways to enhance your spirituality. There's real ways to make yourself feel better, to deal with resentments, to deal with anger, to deal with all that stuff. We wake up every day and it feels like the pressure of the world's all over you, right? Again, we have learned how to start our day, live our day, and end our day without using a substance, a chemical or a narcotic or some type of drink to deal with it. That is recovery. Every day that you go through those feelings and find a natural way to deal with them, you recovered another day, right? That anger, that resentment, every time that all of that happens, and I choose to fix it and deal with it without using, I'm recovering.